The OCD and Anxiety Podcast by Robert James Coaching. Hello and welcome to the OCD and Anxiety Podcast, where we explore how to have a more positive relationship with anxiety disorders, taking back control so that you can start living the life you choose and not the one chosen by your fears. Hello and welcome to episode 410. We are well and truly into summer and hope that it's not too hot wherever you are, or if you like the heat, hopefully it is nice and hot for you. Now, if you are struggling with OCD or anxiety and you would like to get a free session with that, well, you can by heading over to my website, which is robertjamescoaching.com. There you can book in for a free session, or if you prefer, you can send me a message and let me know about what you're struggling with. In today's podcast, I'm going to be talking about something that's very relevant to me and my own personal struggles with OCD. And that is learning how to let go of the kind of anger and the resentment that can come up about having OCD and having to be somebody who struggles with this kind of thing. I think it's really important that we learn how to do that. So today I'm going to be talking about that. If you find the podcast helpful, it would be amazing if you could subscribe. I would really, really appreciate it. You can easily subscribe right now if you wanted to, just by hitting that subscribe button. It really does make a big difference to the podcast. So many thanks, guys. I really hope that you enjoy. If you have any questions at all about anything I speak about today, do please let me know. And off we go. Here is a quote to get us started today, and it's by Louis Gossett Jr. The worst resentment that anybody can have is one you feel justified to keep. And I think this is very, very relevant today for this podcast. And, you know, when we think about resentment and an OCD, I know from personal experience that this is something that I really struggled with, because having OCD is obviously a really horrible thing to have. There's no getting away from it. We know what it's like. It's sickening. It's really difficult. The level of anxiety that you can experience, the frustration, the anger, the hurt, the distrust that you almost have for yourself and for life. I mean, it can be so pernicious. It can be so difficult to overcome at times. And so, of course, resentment and anger and frustration about the OCD is going to come up, and it certainly did for me. For many, many years, I was thinking, why me? Why do I have to have this? Why is life like this? How is this fair that I have to deal with this? It's not fair. And of course, I was kind of going around in circles with that, and I was winding myself up with it, and it obviously wasn't helping the situation at all. As I'm sure you're aware, resentment, obviously it doesn't help. And as that kind of quote points out, the worst thing that we can do is kind of hold on to it indefinitely because we feel justified in it. That is the worst thing that we can do, because resentment is never going to actually help us. All it does is it actually takes away from us. When we feel resentment towards another person, it's almost always 100 times better if we can bring up that resentment with that person to be able to actually express that, so that we're able to kind of clear the air and move forward in that relationship with that person. And if we don't do that, if we just keep that resentment there bubbling under the surface, well, that can lead to all sorts of problems. Of course, sometimes you need to be careful with how you air things, but generally speaking, actually allowing that, that kind of resentment to be expressed in some way, and then to try to move past it, is the thing that is going to help us to feel better. And I think it's the same when it comes to OCD. We have to find a way to recognize the resentment about it, the frustration and anger about it, although, as I've just kind of spoken about, it's absolutely understandable that you feel that way about it. To a certain extent, that's still there for me too. But I think if you can try to find a different way of understanding OCD, it can help you to let go of some of that resentment. It's almost like bringing it up with that person that you need to kind of speak to about something that is bothering you. Well, it's the same thing that we're going to do here when it comes to OCD. If we are able to actually recognize that there's resentment there, there's anger there about the OCD, that it is actually justified, but that it's not actually going to help us moving forward, then we can actually start taking action to do something with that resentment, to actually turn it into something that's a little bit more positive, something that might actually help us moving forward. And that's really all about transforming the resentment into resilience. And of course, resilience is a very important word when it comes to OCD, because it's the word that helps us to lean into our discomfort, to take on challenges, to work on building acceptance, to be a bit more compassionate with ourselves. All of these things involve resilience. And to be honest, when we are resenting something, when we are, holding on to something, we're actually using up an enormous amount of energy. And that's why we don't want to hold on to resentment. We want to actually clear the air. Whilst we're holding on to resentments, we are, we're using up that important energy that we could be putting into overcoming the OCD. And one of the things that I tend to find is helpful for me with this is, rather than focusing on what the OCD has taken away from me, I'm going to focus in on the things that OCD is going to force me to have to learn and develop in my life. And this can be quite a difficult thing to do because, of course, as we've already talked about, there's a lot of very negative things when it comes to OCD. And those are the things that, of course, our attention goes to. So we're not denying those things. Of course, we recognize and we try to accept those things. But at the same time, we also have to recognize that the challenge that OCD presents forces us to make a decision. Are we going to develop ourselves? Are we going to learn how to lean into discomfort and to overcome, the want for certainty? Are we going to have to learn to live with a bit more uncertainty and to be a bit more compassionate with ourselves, to be a bit kinder with ourselves? These are things that we have to do if we want to learn how to overcome OCD. And, I think if we can focus on putting our energy into that, to recognize that, in order for us to overcome those things, we have to start channeling that resentment, which I've already spoken about effectively, that is kind of energy. If we can put that energy into the difficult challenge that OCD presents, in order to develop ourselves in these different ways that I've just kind of spoken about, that can actually then transform what is a very difficult and negative emotion that takes away from us into something that can actually help propel us forward. And I think we have to find a way to do that. We need to find that energy from somewhere. It can be so challenging, so difficult sometimes to lean into that discomfort, to take on that challenge of the OCD. It's almost like we've got to find this strength within us to try to let go of the anger and the resentment, and to not kind of just say, right, I'm not allowed to feel this, because of course that is kind of pushing down your emotions, and we don't want to do that. That's the last thing we want to do. So we have to acknowledge that the resentment is there. We're not going to push it down, but we're going to try to use it to propel us forward, to recognize that we can take on the challenge of OCD, but we need energy to do it. And if you can use that anger, use that frustration to take on those challenges, to push forward, to do the exposure activity, to come back to the present moment when you would much rather just stay there ruminating, to find a way to be a bit more accepting and a bit more resilient, then, that's going to really help you moving forward rather than hindering you, when we just focus on the negativity of it all the time. And this is something that's been very helpful for me in my own life when I've been, when I was incredibly stuck in the past, and, that kind of almost self-hatred at times, that frustration, of course, it was holding me back. But when I learned to say, okay, yeah, I really dislike this, but, it is here and I can't change that. And actually, there are many things in my life that are actually going really, really well, despite the fact that OCD is here. Already, we're beginning to change our focus of this. And of course, what I'm talking about just there is gratitude. And I think this is a big part of that process. And again, I'm not talking about denying reality here. We're not bringing gratitude to having OCD, but we are bringing gratitude to the things in our life that are good. When we focus in on the fact that actually, despite the fact that we have OCD, there may be all sorts of other things going on in your life that are actually really good, that are actually really positive, that really support you and help you. So often when we're really struggling with OCD, we forget about those things and we're just paying attention to the negativity of the situation and the resentment about it. And I think a bit of an antidote to that sometimes is to really focus each day a little bit on the things that are actually going well, the things that you're grateful for, the things that you're happy about. And when we do that, I think that really helps with this process of channeling that anger and that frustration, into trying to overcome the OCD. I think this is a really important topic. It's something that's helped me a lot, and hopefully it will be helpful for you too. If you have any questions at all about anything I've spoken about today, do please let me know, and I will see you next time. Just a quick reminder that if you want to get a free session, all you need to do to get that is to head over to my website, www.robertjamescoaching.com. And there you can leave me a message and we can arrange the free session. And now just a quick reminder of my disclaimer. Any information that you view on my website, Instagram page, Facebook group, or anywhere else online, or any information that you listen to on the podcast is for informational purposes only and is not intended to be a substitute for actual medical or mental health advice from a doctor, psychologist, or any other medical or mental health professional.